All right, Sahana, we are ready for your pro opening speech whenever you are. I have 4 minutes on the clock ready to go.
And my time starts now. Imagine you're just about to go to bed one night, and all of a sudden you hear a bullet ricochet through your front door. And it slams to the ground, and you hear a dog barking in the distance. There are muffles at your front door, but then you hear the sirens, and you hear and you know that there are police officers at your front door. That was basically what happened to Breonna Taylor, and her crime was sleeping in her own room in her own apartment building. And that, Judge, is why I stand in affirmation of the resolution that reallocating a substantial portion of police department funding towards community service would decrease crime, for three reasons. Police officers are over-focused and use violence as a preferred answer. Police officers aren't trained for mental illness situations, and they don't know what a city truly needs to be able to benefit it. My first reason is that police officers are over-focused on violence. As the LAPD motto says, to protect and serve means not only to protect themselves, but to protect the whole population, including the people hurting, as their job description states. According to CNN, many officers resort to using firearms if they are not comfortable apprehending a suspect with physical force first. They don't even attempt to use their mouth. Their mouth was a gift, and all they do is resort to their fists first, and that doesn't benefit anyone. My second reason is that police officers aren't trained for mental illness situations. One example would be suicide by cop situations. This is when a person shoots someone in exchange for the police officer shooting them because they don't have the courage to do it themselves. Think about it. Is this person truly a criminal because they have a gun and they are doing many crimes? Or are they just a patient in need of medical assistance? Another example would be, as Grace Havoc for USA Today wrote, Nicholas Chavez, 27, was having a mental breakdown in Houston when he was shot 21 times by 28 different officers. Now, he may have been stressed, but this happens 30% of the time that police officers go out in the field, which is why community workers are more suited for these situations. Community workers are more suited, for example, because in Eugene, Oregon alone, in just 2015, according to the Cahoots website, out of the 24,000 Cahoots calls, only 150 needed police assistance, showing that the community workers can do their job. My final example will be Sandy Hook, which occurred in December of 2012. The shooter, Adam Lanza, was a mental illness patient, and the 20 kids that died could have graduated from high school just about now. And they could still live their lives if community workers were able to help him and help him cope with his situation before he shot those kids. My final contention is that police officers don't know what a city truly needs to benefit from it. They may live in a city and know what it truly needs, but groups like the aesthetic builders know because they go out every day and they build it ground up. They help build the local grocery store, the local police departments, and police departments don't do that. That's how these people that go in the city know the local cafe barista or the grocery store cashier. While even though the police officers might live there, they don't know what it truly needs. And this creates more division. For example, the 15% of the 35,783 NY officers, or 5,367, are African American, compared to the 26% of 18 million, or give or take around 4 million. This shows that there are great divisions in across the United States. So, Judge, because of the reasons that police officers are over-focused on violence, they aren't trained for mental illness situations, and they don't know what a city truly needs to benefit from it, is why I urge you to vote for affirmative side of this argument. And remember, now the police officers can focus on things more suited for them instead of trying to do the things community workers do best. Thank you.
And that is time. 2 minutes for cross-examination.
Okay. Sahana, in your introduction, Breonna Taylor's was kind of sleeping in her bed and she was shot. How many times does this happen in a year?
It happens numerous times in a year. Not completely often, but pretty often.
Okay. You stated that Well, shouldn't it be better to defund? Shouldn't it be better to train the police instead of defunding them so that they learn how to do things instead of letting medical workers or community service workers come in?
Well, the police officers are being trained for those kinds of things now, and they aren't benefiting from it. They aren't improving from the training we've been given. And we have to remember, we aren't giving them a budget. We aren't giving them more money to improve. We have to reallocate money, and we have to make sure that our tax-paying money is being used in places that benefit the people the best. And that is where community workers come in. They do it the best.
Okay, so um, in an argument, you stated that there's this suicidal thing where a criminal shoots another person and then the police shoot him. Can't the police choose not to shoot the person by proper training?
Well, that's because the police officers are the ones being asked to do it. Now, sometimes they may not be able to do it, but in a lot of cases, the police officers do it because they have nothing else to do, even though they've been trained not to.
Do you have any cases of this happening?
There was one case in Houston, Texas, where a man asked to be shot, and his girlfriend called it in, and he got shot.
In your last contention, you stated that police don't know the city well, but apart from their police life, don't they go to the city as well? They order stuff and they go shopping. How do they not know the baristas or whatever?
They may live there every day, but in certain community workers group, they literally go in there every single day as their job, and they literally build up the city. For example, the aesthetic builders group, community service group, they go in and they build the local ShopRite or the local Wegmans store, and that is how they really bond with people. Sometimes you have to do.
All right. That's time. That's time.
All right.
All right, we're ready to move on to the con opening speech. 4 minutes on the clock.
My
Ethan,
time.
you can begin whenever you're ready.
All right. My time starts now. George Floyd's death was very sad, and the police officers should not have done that. But I still firmly believe that reallocating a substantial portion of police department funding towards community services would not decrease crime. It would not decrease crime because you would lose good officers, not have good training and equipment, and further intensify the problem of recruiting officers. Number one, if you defund the police, it means that we are not able to retain good officers and even lose the ones already serving in the force due to defunding. Good officers are more likely to leave because they have more experience, which makes them good officers, and they are older and tend to be closer to retirement and have more of a reason to leave as opposed to younger people. As a result of this, crime will increase because there are not enough good officers to stop it. Potomac Local News, which is a very credible source, states, cutting a salary of about $52,000 in Prince William County, which is half than the county's $107,925 median income, which will further intensify the recruitment of viable talent. They also stated that fewer younger people are interested in policing. So not only will defunding the police not decrease crime, it will actually increase crime because bad police officers will furthermore anger the criminals into doing bad things. Number two, if you defund the police, it means that they'll have no equipment and training to prevent racism and violence. If they have no body cams, they will arrest people for no reason because they know that there's nothing recording them. If they have no training, it means that they're more likely to shoot and act out and when in the field because they have no idea what is going on. Urban Institute states, as a percentage of direct general expenditures, police spending has remained consistently at just under 4% for the last 40 years. If you decrease this amount furthermore, they will lack training and equipment, leading to more crime and violence. Number three, if you defund the police, it means that many of them will retire, and that means that there will be less police officers to answer the calls of the people. Even though some police are racist, they can still help at the scene because they can be trained and they can be taught. Forbes states new recruits have been in decline for years, with some departments reporting a drop between 50% and 70% since 2015. If you defund this amount, furthermore, there will be more problems with recruiting police, which will lead to more crime because the criminals know that there's no police officers out there to stop them. So, even though the police should not have done that to George Floyd, I still firmly believe that reallocating a substantial portion of police department funding towards community services would not decrease crime. So, Judge, this is why you should not defund the police. Thank you.
2 minutes for cross-examination.
So my first question concerns your first argument, in which you stated that you will lose good officers because their salary will decrease. So wouldn't officers who truly wanted to protect this country and society still be as part of their jobs?
Well, no, because the good officers, or they could just like join somewhere else or another kind of thing that's similar to their job and still like earn a bunch more money than they do at the police department store. So there's no point in staying there where they can do their job in a good way in another place where they earn a lot more money than what they're doing right now. And the bad officers, of course, will leave and they will try and seek higher pay in some other place.
So my second question is, what if we defunded the section given towards firearms, say, and we gave some of that money towards the salary, giving them their normal salary pay, except now they have things like less firearms? Do you think that that would work?
No, because then the police will not be able to defend themselves if you reallocate their firearms money to their salary. And even if you do that, it's not going to be very substantial unless you take away like all their money or a lot of their money. And it won't really, and if you take away from the firearms, they can't really defend themselves anymore.
What happens if we take away the firearms that they say don't need in certain cases?
Well, police officers need most of their firearms, especially in cases because you don't know what's gonna happen when you're out in the field, which is why they need training to like know all these different cases, scenarios, and they need their firearms to kind of do their job and help out the citizens and protect them.
And my final question is, in your second argument, you stated that if we paid for more body cams, then they wouldn't be able to do some unjust things.
Time's up. Time's up. Unfortunately. All right. We are ready to move on to refutation speeches. Sahana, I believe you're giving the first refutation speech. Would you like to use any of your 2 minutes of prep?
We'll use 1 minute.
All right. Clock starts now. I'll let you know when it hits 1 minute. Be sure to tell me to stop the clock when you're ready. One minute used, 1 minute remaining.
Great. Is my opponent and judges ready? And my time starts now. So my opponent stated that if we defund the police, we will lose some good officers, creating more crime. There will be less equipment and training, and more officers will retire soon. Since the improvement rate is less, there will be less officers in general. But take my opponent's second argument, which he said that there will be less equipment and training. But do they really need all of their equipment that they're given? For example, police officers are sometimes given military grade weapons. Now, they don't need this. They're going outside to protect citizens, and the citizens aren't given military grade weapons. So why do they need military grade weapons against the citizens? For example, according to Statista.com, in the United States alone in 2018, police departments and law enforcement spend $1,880,551,399 just on military grade weapons. Do they really need these weapons? And if they do, what will they do with them to bring good to society? Military and usually firearms in general do not need it. So maybe it will be a good thing defunding their equipment section of their department. Also, my opponent stated that they will lose good officers, but if they won't really lose too many officers. For example, give or take around 90% of the tax-paying dollars that we give to the police officers are for their salaries. So if we defund their salaries a little bit, it won't cause a dramatic change, so much that they will have to leave their profession. So they won't lose too many officers. And if an officer really truly wants to benefit a society and the city in their heart, they will try to do their best no matter what to stay as part of the profession to help create it a better society. So, Judge, that is why my opponent, however well-intentioned his arguments may be, that is why they're flawed, and why my arguments that all police officers are over-focused on violence, they aren't. Police officers are over-focused on violence, they aren't trained for mental illness situations, and they don't know what a student truly needs, still stands. Police officers don't truly know how to benefit a society, and taking away some of their funding might teach them a little lesson on how to be the best they can be to help benefit these people in this country. So, Judge, because of those reasons, I urge you to vote for the pro side of this argument. And remember, police officers aren't all bad, but we have to remember sometimes they aren't using their supplies and their money for the best of intentions, and we must make sure that they should. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Sahana.
Can I use a little bit of my prep time?
You certainly may. You have 2 minutes at your disposal. Your clock starts now. Be sure to let me know when you're ready to begin.
Okay, I'm ready.
20 seconds used. You have 1 minute and 40 seconds remaining, Ethan.
My time starts now. I would like to address something that came up in the cross-examination. And my opponent, Sahana, stated that there is training going on right now. But there is no training, which is why the police officers are racist. And also that we shouldn't defund the police. Instead, we should train them so that they know how to operate. Also, if we defund the police, she stated that community services workers will step in and they will help take control of the situation, help them. But police officers have to do their own jobs, and the experts have to do theirs. And if you allow experts to come in, then what are the police doing that will make their job special? So instead, you should train the police officers. Also, she stated that the suicidal cases of a criminal shooting another person and then the police shooting him in response, there was only one case, which is not very substantial compared to a lot of the other cases. So, also, in her third argument, she stated that many police officers do not know what is best for their city and that community service workers do. But the police officers do know their own city. And even if they don't live in their own city, they know what it's like in their own city. So that they know that when they go shopping, they know what the city needs. And when they go eating food at the restaurant, they know what the city needs as well. They're not clueless. So the police do know their city. And it's not just the community service workers and the average day citizens that do. Also, she stated that many weapons are not necessary for police officers. But if they have the exact same weapons as the citizens, what if the citizens shoot the police and they run away? The police need kind of an advantage over them to kind of catch them so that they can secure that the criminals are caught. So the police are here to protect us, and some of them are being racist, but defunding them is not the answer. Instead, we should try and train them, try and help them understand that if there is a situation that they can't control, they have to be able to handle that situation by themselves. So, Judge, I urge you to vote con, because the only way, you cannot stop racist police officers just by defunding them and giving them a warning. Thank you.
All right. We're ready to move on to closing speeches. Sahana, you get to go first. You have 1 minute of prep time left. Would you like to use any of it?
Yes.
All right, then your clock starts now. I'll let you know when your time is up. Of course, you're welcome to begin whenever you're ready.
All right.
And that's 1 minute. Sahana, I have 2 minutes on the clock for your closing speech whenever you're ready to begin.
All right, and time starts now. So, judges, to sum up what was given in today's debate, my opponent stated that we will lose good officers, therefore increasing crime. We will have less equipment and training, and we will have more officers retiring, and since there are less officers signing up to be new ones, we will have less officers altogether. But we have to remember that if we say, as my opponent said in his reputation, if we train them, then aren't we training them to be community service members? It doesn't really matter what they're called, but if you train them, now you're taking them and you're turning them into the community service members. So we have to remember that. My opponent also stated that we're going to lose a lot of the equipment and the training and the officers all together, but sometimes we don't need that many. There are millions upon millions of officers, and sometimes, even though we might say that there are always going to be a few bad people, we have to teach them a lesson by being able to defund the police. After all, we aren't defunding them completely. We're just taking the funds that aren't best suited for the police officers and giving them somewhere else. So, Judge, because of those reasons, I stand in affirmation of that resolution. And we have to remember that police officers are over-focused on violence. They don't know how to treat the situations community workers can. And community workers are the reason that we can help being a better. And remember, Judge, we aren't keeping a budget. We are just reallocating money to best suit it. So we can't just keep training them because we are training them and they aren't benefiting from it. So the best way is to be giving our tax-paying money into places where it is more suited. So, Judge, I urge you to vote for the pro side of this argument. Thank you.
All right, Ethan, you have 1 minute and 40 seconds. Would you like to use any of it?
Yeah.
And in that case, the clock starts now.
All right, I'm ready.
All right. Then in that case, 2 minutes on the clock for your final speech, Ethan.
Okay. To sum up what was happening in this debate, my opponent stated that if you defund the police, it gives them a warning. But if you defund the police and giving them a warning, it does not stop them from being racist. Instead, it motivates them. Also, if you train the police, she also stated that when you train the police, it's basically making them become community service workers and that we're wasting money. But when we train them, we're actually helping them understand their own jobs so that they won't be racist and that they can help the citizens. So, and that the community service workers or whatever experts, they have their own training and the police have theirs so that they can understand their own job. So, Judge, I urge you to vote con because the only way that we can stop racist police officers is by training them or just by helping them all together so that we can have a safer, brighter tomorrow. Thank you.
All right, Sahana and Ethan, that concludes your quarterfinal round debate. So we'll give you a round of applause for the work that you put into that and how well you did. We'll give a quick minute for the judges to finish getting their last thoughts down on the ballots. And as with the last debate, if you will send your decisions to Ron and to myself whenever you're ready. Okay. We're ready to take about 10 minutes and give some feedback here, and we'll have you guys out of here at about 5:30. So, shall we go ladies first again? Nicole, do you have anything you'd like to start with for feedback?
Yeah, so this was another really, really good debate. Again, very engaging. You guys are doing a great job, especially presentation wise. I've just been super impressed, so it's nice when these rounds start getting to like the out rounds because they just keep getting so good. But overall, you guys did a great job. As for some just like pointers, let's see. So you guys like a lot of really specific examples. I think that if you're able to pull out of like those like small examples and kind of apply it on a broader scale and really talk about like the trends that you're trying to discuss, that would really make things a lot easier. So like why crime would increase and why crime wouldn't increase, or why instances like Breonna Taylor wouldn't occur. So like get really specific into why that would happen. Or I think Sahana, you went more towards the route of like a lesson for police officers. Well, like explain like how defunding actually, does that lesson. But you guys are really interactive, or like teaches that lesson, or like if that actually will do anything. Because Ethan does a really good job of saying like nothing's gonna happen if you defund the police, right? You guys had a really good job interacting with each other's arguments. I liked your closing speeches a lot. Um, I would just want to hear more about like your guys' examples in your opening speeches, because you guys give a whole bunch of really, really good examples and good statistics. Like you were saying, 30% of the time they go out on a call, some sort of like this violence occurs. So if you have like really good examples like that, definitely bring it to the closing speech. Don't bring them all, but bring the most important ones so we remember that, because it always seems like every time, the further we get from the closing speech, the more we forget about the closing speech, which is not great. I mean, not that it's not great, but like that's just like not a good strategy, because your foundation is your opening speech. That is the foundation of your argument, and you build off of that. So don't forget it. You got to make sure your foundation is really, really strong. Overall, it was a really good debate. Good job, guys.
Paul.
Yeah, I'll just give each of you one or two things. Sahana, you might have heard me say this in the last debate too. You're also presenting some negatively framed arguments in the beginning, like you're telling me that they're not trained enough. But you want to avoid the word "not" in these claims, because that makes it end up sounding like refutation, and you end up using it as refutation again later. So you want to keep your claims in your case like very positive. Tell me what is happening, not that police are not trained to handle this. You want to focus it on these community services are trained to handle it. And that's going to strengthen these arguments a little bit, make them sound less like refutation. The other thing I'll note is, what are your note cards made out of? Is it gold or lead? It's not gold or lead? You think you could hold them with one hand instead of both? You're going to free up a hand to give us some more gestures if you can manage to do it one. Then yeah, you switch cards in your refutation speech. That's fine. But if you're just standing like this the whole time, you're not really using everything you could. Then on Ethan, your case is a little confusing to me, Ethan, because your first argument is that we'll lose officers, and then you imply that it'll be the oldest officers. Then you give me an argument about equipment. Then you give me an argument about old officers again. I think your third and first argument are the same, and you need to combine them. Yeah, Ethan?
Well, mine was just good officers. I just said they like tend to be older, but like new officers can also leave as well, and they could be the good officers as well.
Sure, but I still think even with that nuance, with that extra explanation, I still think your first and third argument are either the same argument and need to be combined, or at the very least, one is leading into the other and you need to present them next to each other. I wouldn't sandwich a completely unrelated argument about between them. But otherwise, I thought that was pretty good. Both of you, you both did a great job. And I will point out one more thing, good thing you did, Ethan, and that is at the very end, really coming down on defunding doesn't solve the racism. Like that was a really good point to bring up too. Really contextualizes parts of the debate.
As I get started here with my feedback, I want to congratulate both of you on something that a lot of younger debaters especially tend to struggle with, and that's clarity. Because I felt like in this debate, it was actually fairly easy to follow what you guys were saying, to understand which arguments you were responding to, and to understand what you were saying at the rate at which you were speaking. It was very easy to tell what you were saying, and also to follow your line of reasoning and your argument. So I thought that was really good from both of you. A couple of things for constructive feedback that I mentioned for how to get better. First of all, Ethan, one of the things that I noticed about your refutation speech and your closing speech is that you tended to leave some extra time on the table at the end. I don't know, were you timing yourself, or were you just kind of going until it felt like you were done?
I was timing myself, but yeah.
Okay, so in both, according to my clock at least, in both your refutation speech and your closing speech, you left some time on the end. You left about a minute left on the closing speech, and I think maybe about 20 or 30 seconds left at the end of the refutation speech. Now, in the refutation speech specifically, here's something that I think you can really take advantage of very well with the rest of that time. Your refutation speech did a great job of signposting and showing us what you were responding to, and then you gave a very clear rebuttal or response to each of the arguments or points that you addressed. But the part that I felt like we were missing in that refutation speech was you comparing the two sides and showing why your arguments are actually better than Sahana's arguments. And you had 30 seconds left over, so even if you did a quick little summary comparison at the end, that would have been a great way to use that time instead of just letting it kind of go to waste. And the same would be true in the closing speech. You had about an extra minute left over at the end there that you could have spent going back through and describing how much better your view of things is than Sahana's, giving us some vivid detail and explaining why we really need these police officers to keep us safe. And yes, there are some things we can do to improve, but imagine how terrible things would be if we destroyed that. If you could set that comparison up in that last minute of the speech with a little bit more detail, that would have been a fantastic way to spend that time. Sahana, one of the things I noticed about you, and the way that you weave things through each of your speeches, you weaved pathos through each of your speeches really well. I mean, there were just several things in each part of the debate where I thought, man, she is appealing to emotion all over the place. So great job incorporating that. But keep in mind, for example, one of the things that caught my attention was like your military style weapons or equipment argument. It's talking about like turning military weapons on civilians does sound like a bad thing. But one of the questions in my mind was, okay, well, what should we do differently? Why don't we need them? You know, what should we change? And Ethan kind of came back against that and he says, well, we don't want the police to get overpowered by people. And you kind of, one of the things that kind of played against you on that point for me, Sahana specifically, was that you kind of just assumed or asserted that civilians don't have access to guns and military grade weaponry and fill in the blank. And there are, while maybe not everybody does, there are criminals who do. And Ethan kind of came back and pointed that out a little bit. Where he was like, well, we don't want criminals to take advantage of the police because they're not armed and not equipped well. So if you're going to argue about, maybe they don't need this type of weaponry, I think you need to give more support to explain why it's not necessary rather than just kind of saying that it's not necessary. Because someone like Ethan could just as easily come back and say, well, what about gangs with automatic weapons running around in Chicago, gunning people down? If he brings up an example or something like that, it makes your argument seem kind of weak. So that's just food for thought moving forward. All right, it is 5:30. Actually, I'm going to sneak one last comment here before I reveal the decision. One last thing. Presentation style. You guys were very measured and polished in your presentation. Going along, though, with what Paul mentioned, I think we need more animation in your presentation. So more facial expressions showing your passion and your feeling. Sahana, when you appeal to those emotions, let me see it on your face, not just hear it in your voice. I felt like Ethan and Sahana, both of you kind of had the same basic expression on your face the whole debate. Try to make your facial expression match the thing you're describing, and even the way your voice is describing it. Sometimes you would use really good inflection in your voice, but your face wouldn't change. So think about that as well, and gestures won't hurt. All right, it is 5:31 now. So based on the feedback that I have gotten from the other judges on the panel, with a 2-1 decision, split decision. This was a close debate. This panel is going to give the win to Sahana, but it was close. It was a split decision. So good job, guys. Congratulations on making it to quarterfinals and doing a great job. You should be very proud of the progress that you've made and the work you've put into this. We could tell that you've done a great job preparing. All right, well, Sahana, Ethan, and to everyone else in here who might be listening and observing, thank you for this quarterfinal round. I think that's going to do it for us for this evening. Hope you all enjoy your evening and look forward to seeing you guys again next time.
Thank you.
Bye. Congratulations, everyone. Good job.